Oh.
There's us.
Oh, I heard her.
Yeah.
Jim's not a waiting room.
There he is. Got it.
And Tony.
Just getting Kevin on.
We can probably get started and he'll be on.
Okay, so we'll call.
Somebody is parking in my parking place.
Oh,
You know what?
So it's my only perk. So
I think oh, there he is. I don't think I've ever seen a car
What
parked
kind
there.
of
What's
car
the,
is
what's,
it? I hope it wasn't mine.
It's a big gray something. Anyway,
I don't see a sign out there. It says mayor.
in my parking place, there is a sign. that
Well,
says
I
mayor.
wasted all these years. Maybe I'm in it.
No,
It's
you're
not that big of a
not.
truck over there, is it?
Goodness, I hope it's not me, and if it is me, I apologize, but I didn't see
Anyway,
the sign.
no.
the only vehicle I ever see there is usually a police cruiser. Sometimes on a weekend I'll see parked there.
Anyway, my point is I parked in 82M. So if somebody, I just don't want to get ticketed.
I think
Kevin,
if they're,
Kevin, can you hear us? You're muted, but you heard us, so good.
Okay, well, let me call the meeting to order, the meeting of the Personnel Committee, March 28th, 2022, 6 p.m. All members of the committee are here in addition to the mayor and Kelsey Haddad and Polly Schaefer and our town manager. Is there any member of the public who has indicated a comment or?
no, we did not receive.
Okay, so the next
Present.
item
Was
would be,
there- I'm sorry, I know, was there a comment to record?
I'm sorry.
Was there a comment to record the meeting by Betty Watson?
No, that
It-
was, I think Terry, you done with Terry's remark earlier?
Yeah,
That was before the pandemic.
okay.
But this is still being recorded because it's on Zoom.
first item then is the approval of the minutes of the February 28th, 2022 meeting. Is there a motion? Carrie?
I move to
Move to
approve.
approve the minutes, a second. I will second. Any comments, corrections, additions? And with that, all in favor of the approval of the minutes? It's approved unanimously. Next, old business. It was suggested by Ryan, actually echoed by others, that it would be a good idea if we're going to talk about changing the name of the Personnel Committee to talk about a charge to the committee. There never had been, to my knowledge, a formal charge. When I was first named to the council and Mayor Shapiro said, would you serve on the Personnel Committee? I said, fine, what does the Personnel Committee do? And he said, well, so I thought it probably would be a good idea. And so I took my hand, as I mentioned last time, to make some suggestions for that. And that is in part of the packet, but I understand that there are some suggestions from Kevin, is that correct?
Yeah, so Kevin, just so you know, I was gonna do a screen share, you'd see it, but I did pull up the document that you sent back to me.
So let me just bring up, there's what I wanted to sort of try to tease out a little bit, if it's the committee's desire to do so, is there's two separate provisions that sort of deals with the operation of the town in general in the charter. I'm just pulling that up if you give me half a second there. There we go. So as you're all aware, under the charter, the town manager is appointed as the chief executive officer, the exact terms that he shall be the chief executive officer of the town, and his duties are to oversee the departments and the operation of the town. There's a separate provision in the charter that also talks about the town council's duties and powers, where, and this is under 303, really B, which talks about the ability to create, abolish departments, officers, agencies, and employments, adopt regulations for the operation of departments and agencies. So all I was really sort of trying to tease out a little bit in terms of addressing that is to highlight that there is a little bit, I wouldn't even call it a tension, but there's an interplay between those two different roles. And some may be a little bit more gray than others, but for the most part, it's not solely, certain areas are not solely the purview of the council, some other will be solely the purview of the manager, and there may be some interplay between those two. And I thought that in terms of looking at a longer term adoption of a mission statement or a theme of that, listing particular things that are of importance to us now may not be as informative as someone looking at this 10 or 15 years from now. So that's sort of my thoughts on it, and that's what when Ryan had asked me to take a look at it, that's what I was trying to address in those red lines on that. So it's in part of that. I don't know, Ryan, if you share your initial, some of those changes were yours and some of them were mine, but the matters teasing out between the two was addressed areas that I had addressed.
Yeah, so I guess just to kind of walk people through what got sent over here. So that Kevin added a note, pinned a note to the first bullet, because this is something that's sort of specifically the personnel committee's role, responsibility. So whereas everything else on this list, this is under a caption of the personnel committee may do these things. It's not a shall, it's a may, kind of depending on the need. That this one particular item, perhaps because it's a foundational thing the personnel committee does, it is kind of a shall and not a may. Maybe this gets, moved out into one of its own specific, it's like a specific list of itself, so to speak. It's under shall, and then everything else would be a may. And then I think Kevin just added some language here, kind of along the lines of what he was just saying, just sort of reinforcing language so that, to try to head off at the past and potential, I guess, differing interpretations over, what sort of issues or matters related to personnel the personnel committee would delve into versus that which is, more truly an operations matter, sort of administrative matter. So
Can I comment on the administer the evaluation? The historical issue here is that for a while, the council as a whole did the administration. And it's at some point we said, let's let the personnel committee draft the evaluation form and be responsible for the conduct of it. So that's why I think it still belongs in the may, because the council may decide that it doesn't want the personnel committee to do that. So,
Yeah.
That was my read too.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it's the town council job as a whole, and the town council decides to have the personnel committee do it.
We put that under Ryan's suggestion. I put in that first sentence, recognizing that pursuant, et cetera. Somehow the evaluation of the town manager is not under the auspices of the town manager. It is under the auspices of the council. And are we okay the way it's worded now, that that's not?
right, you're saying like everything else on the list kind of would fall into that category of what this header is sort of saying. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a little clunky perhaps,
Yeah.
but it's probably not problematic. It's just,
Okay. Okay.
If I could suggest, Councilman Sharon, you might, on that sentence, where it says administer in coordination, you could insert and at the direction of the council, so that if should they change that in the future, you wouldn't have to go back through this.
Yeah, that's good. Administer at the direction of the town council. Direction of the council.
Brian's got a comment.
Yeah, before this, we've been doing annual review, and we just did an annual review a couple of months back. So we're not doing an annual review. We're going to do it by the fiscal year in May. Is that what we're doing now?
Well, I think,
Your evaluation?
well, I mean, there was a sort of calendar tying it to the anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I started in November of 2020, and so the idea would be that would happen again, because I think
Yeah.
it would be odd, it would be unusual, I guess, break from practice if, because we do personnel evaluations when they're coming up to their anniversary date of hire. And so I think that's the way the council's historically done.
No, because the evaluation predicts salary and salary runs with fiscal year. We wanted the evaluations to be done in May or, so they'd be completed by the beginning of the fiscal year so that there wouldn't be any retroactive pay. We would make a decision before the budget went through.
Well, that's not exactly on our agenda now, but tell me where this leads us for this next couple of months.
Well, the assumption, as I recall, right, was that we would do a 6-month evaluation the first time, and then we would begin the cycle of annual evaluations in the spring.
This spring, starting in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. But you just finished. When did you finish when did we finish the last?
I don't
one?
remember the details, but I really think it's off the agenda and we
Yeah.
can revisit that when we have the
Yeah.
stuff in
Okay.
in front of us.
You don't want
I don't
to,
really,
you don't want to state it and,
because
okay.
that it
No,
could change.
okay,
It's
okay.
it's not something that's, it depends on lots of variables.
okay, I'm good with that.
Keep us apprised.
Well,
I think
you know, all-
It's Holly's will
Yeah.
keep us surprised.
Right,
She's,
yeah. Okay, so, right,
I was wondering maybe if we should add diversity and equity into our charge. How we're doing in our hiring practices along the lines of diversity and equity.
I'm
Would
not
that
sure
be a
we're supposed
personnel
to,
committee issue, maybe?
I think that's a Holly issue. Like Holly is the hired professional to do this stuff. And she's the one with the expertise. And it could be that she has an issue that she brings to us that she wants us to review in terms of policy or even just an actual real personnel issue. But my understanding of our role is not to be an expert, is to allow the experts to do their work. So I agree with you entirely, Brian, that that's definitely something that council and the town has said that we want to do, but we're not the police force in that. If it's not happening, then we've got an issue when we need to bring that to the town manager. But to put it in specifically in like something that we're, reviewing for, that's not our job, that's Holly's.
the
Well,
town
I'm-
had,
I'm sorry, I'm not really trying to make it anybody's job. I mean, it would be just making recommendations to the town council or the town manager.
But they make recommendations to us is how it works, because they're on the ground.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who have all the facts. So Holly's got her fingers on all of this stuff. And if something needs to be changed to move the needle for diversity, equity, inclusion, she brings that to us.
now, I don't remember well enough our policies, but do we have in the policy manual of the town language regarding diversity and equity in terms of all things, including personnel?
I believe so. Yeah.
So you said the word personnel, so it's a personnel issue and the personnel committee should have nothing to do with it.
That's
Well,
right.
correct.
It's the distinction that I would draw is between executing and policy setting, between administration and policy setting. Council does not administer. The council sets policy. So we would write a rule that said the town will aspire to be equitable. Then we turn it over to our professionals to achieve that. And if at some point a complaint comes or a change in the policy is necessary, then we revisit. But it's not our job to do that on a regular basis.
I would recommend a review.
Well,
Of our
the difference, the town charter is pretty clear on the distinction between administering and policy making. And we're the legislative branch. We are not the executive branch.
What I think you're suggesting is that in the council's oversight function,
Mhm.
which does exist, to assure that indeed it is being administered.
But doesn't that make us
I don't-
police officers?
I don't think-
We have an
So, I mean,
oversight.
am I gonna knock on Holly's door one day and say, I need to see the personnel files, I need to know if everybody's raised?
No,
No.
that's not our job.
No, the idea just generally is to assure, in a broad sense, as any legislative body with an oversight responsibility does, to assure that the policy is being implemented. That does not necessarily mean item by item, looking at, it means, should there be complaints, concerns, what body? Is it the full council? Is it a committee? Who looks to make sure that the policy is being implemented and administered?
And Holly, if there was some sort of concern about diversity, equity, and inclusion, what would happen?
Well, to your point, it is my responsibility as part of doing the hiring to make sure we have diverse candidates, that they're being considered. If there was concerns, I would first go to Brian with regards to if I had a concern of the hiring practices in any one area within the town, to then be discussed and make sure that I am putting a diverse slate in front of the hiring manager. And if there are trends or patterns, understand why there is not equal distribution of hiring along that lines. But my first thing would be to go to Ryan.
And if there is a feeling on the part of the council that the policy is not being implemented, that's one of the factors that would weigh into the evaluation of the town manager.
Yes,
That's a
or
role.
into the budget.
Right, as well as mine,
Mhm.
for not providing a diverse slate
Yeah.
of candidates.
But it is not a specific function of the personnel committee.
I guess I pulled that out because it was e.g. harassment protection and line of work and holidays and hours. It's a similar thing. That's what I saw that in the charge.
So those are things we've looked at before.
As policies.
Yeah.
And.
I'm talking policy.
Yeah, and those were things that were brought to us specifically by the, by previous staff or by Holland. So sort of things that could come in front of us, but I think they got crossed out because they didn't, my guess is they didn't want to sort of say specifically these things fall to us.
And then that if something's not mentioned, it doesn't mean that it's not.
Thinking.
Yeah.
So the idea is to eliminate that, which I'm okay.
Thank you.
I can't quite make out for all those matters within the purview of the town council, review and advise for all those.
I mean, then just strikes the examples.
Okay. I'd like to just do a clean, not present something to the council tonight, but do a clean copy and present it to the council at the next meeting. And perhaps I can get a copy of
Yeah.
that. I can-
I mean, I think
Yeah.
personnel, and not to
Yeah.
cut you off, this is where you were going, would probably wouldn't be a bad idea for you guys to vote like on
Yeah.
this, like as amended or whatever you want to call this, and then we can clean that up and
Okay,
keep the ball rolling.
so we can do that at our next meeting.
For now, I mean, if you're happy, I guess it depends on if you're still tinkering with the language. I guess
Yeah.
that's-
I'm wondering why the professional development stuff is outside of the general policy stuff. Why it has its own bullet.
Recruitment of professional assistants. Oh, that just implied
What do you-
people not
Are
full-time.
you
like-
talking about this professional development? Or are you
Yeah.
talking about the one that does
Yeah.
this show up down here too?
Yeah, I mean, I know that's something we've worked on before, but that, the town manager, the human resources person at the time brought it to us. But it seems like it's one of those things that may not always bring to us.
Well, right, and that's why I guess so.
Mhm.
So to be completely honest, this one feels very operational to me, because we can budget for it, have decisions on who gets what
Mhm.
training. I mean, again, this list is a may, so it's not a shall, doesn't mean you have to be consulted. So I guess, I'm not don't a huge amount of heartburn leaving it on the list, but Terry, if I'm being honest, this particular one kind of felt like operations.
Yeah, it seems more like the policy matter.
Or it's
Yeah,
kind of covered in this anyway.
that would be I know we've done it, but I don't know that we always have to do it.
Yeah, I would recommend eliminating the whole thing.
Okay. The professional development.
Yes.
I mean, at that point, they were doing some radical changes and they were
Oh,
running
that
it by
was-
us.
Yeah.
Change of job titles. and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Okay,
I mean, there is just, I mean, just classification compensation is so specifically called out. So I mean, this is literally like training and so.
Budgeting for,
Yeah.
look, explaining why they want to budget for it and stuff
Mhm.
like that for that
Okay.
particular big ask at the time.
And then just to, we don't forget to mention this one, Kevin inserted again, just to reaffirm under the purview of the council, under the charter here when it comes to
Right.
contractual
Yeah.
services. Just to not muddy the waters, so somebody thinks it's all procurement or something.
yeah, I wouldn't want to have architects under, I mean, yeah.
Ryan's got his hand up.
Back on the evaluation of town manager, I wasn't really pleased in the actual process of the evaluation. Will the committee have any say, or shall we review the process of the
We get
actual
to design
evaluation?
it, which
Huh?
It's up to us to put it together and design it. So
Okay,
we'll-
good, okay.
it'll
Should
in
that
our
be
hands.
stated here or not?
Well,
It says
we say-
administer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we'll have a busy April and May in that regard. Okay, so if a clean copy can then come and we'll talk about it at the next meeting, and then what would we do? Present it to the council?
I
for-
think you might as well adopt the charge as amended
Yeah,
and then present it to the council's next meeting. But I would,
Since
might
we're
as
here.
well adopt it tonight.
okay, well then I will entertain a motion to do that. I have no.
So
Okay.
moved to-
Second?
One second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. So at the next meeting, what will the council do? Because we haven't done, as I remember, council has not formally voted charges to committees.
Oh, yeah. It can go on the agenda
Yeah.
as a thing, or it can be part of the committee's report, one or the
Okay.
other.
And then the council will vote it.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay,
and we've changed charges on a number of organizations. Agriculture seems to me to be the one that's most recent.
but we are a little different in that we are a constituted committee of the council.
Right.
Okay, next, the Personnel Appeals Board, which turned out to be more complicated than I thought it would be. And if I can, Holly and others can correct me if I'm wrong. But a couple of years ago, there was some Personnel Appeals Board is, the town is allowed to adopt that by under state statute. The town did take steps to have our Ethics Commission fulfill this function. It went a couple of steps, but never was fully consummated. So here we are. There are 24 non-union employees who would be subjected to a personnel action in which this would be one of the avenues of appeal, kind of a penultimate avenue of appeal. And so here we are. We do not have duly constituted or fully constituted this board.
It doesn't have appointments, or it doesn't, it's duly constituted.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
Yeah, and I had
Okay.
a conversation with Sarah Ann after we met
okay,
Thursday, just to get the historical
Yeah.
perspective. It's great to have somebody to go back to.
Yeah.
and say what happened, and she did. She said there is a personnel appeals board. Her comment was she wasn't sure if many members were still alive. It's been so long
Yeah.
since it was appointed.
Mhm.
But it was adopted. There were people appointed. It's never had to be utilized.
There's a table that she sent that I'm not sure if I have here.
They may have only sent it to you.
Yeah, I don't
but
have
may
it.
have
Okay.
Copies of it.
Is it just the table?
That's
Yeah,
the table.
you're right.
I can use it for copies.
I do have it.
That for my own visual purposes,
Okay.
I looked at the personal appeals board, the ethics board, and then what the state
Mhm.
requires.
So our Personnel Appeals Board, with its perhaps now deceased members, had 5 members, as was appropriate, as was called for, 2 appointed by the town manager, 3 appointed by the town council. And that's kind of where that stands.
Correct. That's right out of the code.
Yeah. Under the state of Connecticut, such a board should have 5 members, not more than 3 of the same political party. Were we to proceed with the earlier idea of having the Board of Ethics serve this function, there's a complexity that somebody can kind of help me with. It's a different number of members and a different appointment set of requirements.
And very different responsibilities and knowledge.
Right. So, so the question is, could this be one of the functions of the ethics board, which has many other functions? Or should we disregard that earlier effort to put this under the ethics board?
Let me give
Yeah.
you, I'm sorry, I'm really butting in.
Yeah.
but, The policy that this board administers is employment policy. It
Mhm.
includes things like leaves of absence, applications for sabbatics, sick leave. And the ethics board has no knowledge and no competence in personnel issues. They may know something about what our rules of ethics are.
This is to hear grievances, not develop those policies. Grievance, somebody denied us about a.
That's
whatever.
right, but my point is, the Board of Ethics, that's not among the, every board has a set of codes it's
Mhm.
supposed to know. The Ethics Board is not supposed to know the Personnel Policy Manual. And I think it's truly inappropriate to ask them to learn that on top of ethics, because I think that a number of complaints that might arise under personnel policies are much more likely to be limited to misuse of leave time, for example, than any kind of ethical issue.
Well, I agree with that. And then their question is, what do we do? Do we reconstitute this, appoint new people? What do we do? I mean, as of now, an aggrieved one of those 24 people loses a step if this board is not.
Well, we could
Up and functioning.
create a board. There's nothing to say that the board had to exist before.
In some towns, I
Yeah.
think your research showed that sometimes they specifically constitute a board, appeals board for the specific
Case.
grievance to avoid a situation where one of the standing members is the cousin of the employee, so it's a, you kind of, so you can do that by design. But,
So what you're saying is, I'm sorry, just one. So if a person is aggrieved and they go through the process and they feel that they're entitled to one more hearing, at that point, a new board created under the,
No, it's not a new board, Ron. It's
a new
merely,
group of people.
and merely
You
reappointment.
populate
Yes, right,
the-
okay,
And that's, again, that's one,
yeah.
so you have to do it that way. That's.
Yeah.
You're gonna say something, Helen?
No, that's exactly right. You could appoint people now and they may never need to serve, hopefully. Or could wait until they go through the grievance process. And it gets to the appeals board and then appoint appeals board at that time.
How should we proceed?
Well, it seems that we have folks who were appointed, then they are appointed, and it doesn't look like there's an end date. So either we unappoint them or we just leave them sitting, which is fine. And so maybe 3 of the 5 are still alive and still willing to serve. And that leaves just maybe 2 that need to be filled. But if we decide to leave it as we don't populate it, it seems like we need to recognize those people who are there and decide either whether to stay there so they know, or whether we're going to unappoint them.
You don't happen to have a list of those?
I don't, but I could get one,
I
obviously.
have a feeling Lee Terry is one of the,
Should be good.
she would be, but I think she hasn't been called in a decade since she was
Yeah.
first appointed.
So yeah, so that would be, I think, given that this has never been used, that it's silly to appoint people, given that we could certainly get the appointments made as when necessary. But I do think that if people are on it, then we give the option for them to step down. But I think it would be funny to be unappointed and not know it.
I have a little bit of a concern of appointing people once there's the grievance in process.
I do too.
Yeah, that is the
Yeah.
concern with
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yeah,
But why is that a concern?
You
because,
can stack the board.
exactly.
Well, it'd be hard to stack it. One is you have to have there has to be division in the political party. I mean, you're gonna stack the board against the person, is that the thinking?
That's the concern.
Or
Or
the other
four.
way.
It could work either way. And I think the board should be in place. Should a grievance come up,
Yeah.
well ahead, five members. Now,
Well, I would say do terms so that we revisit it every now and then, so that they're like 3-year terms. So we're not 10 years from now again, like, who's on that board? Are they still alive?
so are we going to repopulate this board? Is that what
Well,
we're doing?
first, we should talk about whether we're going to make any changes in the Constitution, such as having fixed terms on the board. And once we've decided how the board is going to be populated, then talk about populating the board.
I think we should find out who's on it. I think.
Can I just interject a question? So Kevin, the relevant state statute here that articulates how a personal appeals board would be constituted, does it say anything allowing or precluding fixed terms, or is that within the realm of the council to decide?
Let me take a look.
One thing we could do too is maybe write in like they have an annual meeting or something, so they get together once a year to remember that they're on it, and to check in on any personnel issues or,
Updates or changes.
yeah,
or-
just.
So if we were to have a grievance right now, are we ready?
Well, we'd have to, I guess, check the vital stats of whoever was previously appointed, and pending that, populate the remaining slots.
No time better than now.
So if you had 2 vacancies, I guess first thing you have to figure out
Who they were
who
appointed
they were,
by.
who they were appointed by, those the manager vacancies, council, a split, who fills them, right?
And the party affiliation.
Yeah.
No, it does not say any specific term. You can, obviously, it implies that is a fixed term. Is the terms of office shall be arranged so that no more than one such term shall expire in any 1 year.
And no expiring.
So you'd start off with, I guess, a maximum of a 5-year term and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then start it all over again with them. So.
So
I think you could probably do, well, no, you couldn't do shorter than that unless you had fewer than 5 people.
But the statute prescribes 5, right?
Yep. Yeah, so you would have to go with 5-year terms staggered so that each year one person comes up.
So I would move that we I don't know what the right word is because it's all constitute, but that we set forth that the Personnel Appeals Board consists of 5 members, each serving a 5-year term, staggered so that no more than one person's term comes to an end in any 1 year.
Maybe we should wait till we get the whole sort of thing and do it all as one, like.
One thing to toss out just for your collective consideration, I guess. I understand that there's, good intent, good meaning involved with the idea of, even if there's not like a pending issue, kind of get the group together. But I guess I maybe see it a little bit differently. I see this as like a jury pool, in a sense, like, and you don't get the group together just to kind of get it together unless there's something to act on. Same thing like the zoning appeals board of appeals. If there's not an appeal, they don't kind of get together to get together.
Yeah, I was just thinking,
I know,
nothing ever happens.
I know,
Sort of.
some level of
Yeah.
activity so that they don't forget, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
years
Yeah,
go
and
by.
it also allows whoever bring, whatever
Yeah,
staff
like I
member
said, let me-
is a way of sort of gauging that maybe
Yeah.
somebody is ready to step off, and then, part of the difficulty with appointing people is that it's sometimes they need to resign in order to, the rules are not quite, unless it clearly states that somebody can unappoint them, it's sometimes not clear how to get somebody off of a committee if they're not participating meaningfully. So another, just getting together to gauge who who's still in town, who's still alive, who still wants to do the job is kind of important.
So how should we now proceed on this?
I just have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Where does the bargaining unions come in? At what particular point are we in bargaining process here
They're not,
This is only for non-union.
for non-union?
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that.
as I say, 24 people, not, well, including, not, you're not part of this, but 23 or. I don't know.
It's 24, not including the year.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But I mean, Brian, if we didn't gather them together, a staff person probably could just do some sort of round outreach on an
Right.
annual basis
Yeah.
would be another way.
Yeah.
I'm just some sort of
Right.
check-in to
Yeah.
say,
Like your
What-
term is coming up,
Mhm.
you know,
The
or
committee, you give it to the committee on committees, because they're gonna have to replace somebody every year.
well, kind of, but this comes from actually the town manager, this is one of the town manager
Oh,
and the
right.
town
Yeah.
council are making.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't go through the committee on committees.
Unless they just acted on the 3 that were the town councils, I guess. prerogative.
Well, I would shift it over to the committee
Well, I mean,
on
you-
committees to make recommendations
Yeah.
or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, when things have been appointed by the town manager before, they haven't gone through the committee on
Right.
committees.
Although
And-
there have been times when Matt said, I don't know who to get, see if you can find somebody for me.
Yeah, but it's not really the committee, I mean, it's the staff person then who's doing the outreach. And we might know people, we might ask them, but today, the high functioning folks that we have are doing a lot of outreach for us.
Yeah.
They're using social media and such to get, which is great.
Mhm.
Sarah, please, I'm always wrecking her last
Right.
name, is been really, really awesome in doing outreach of late.
so again, what would we like to do at this point? First, find out who's on the committee, who's around,
Right.
and then see where we go, but then do something about this 5-year business, about the terms being for a 5-year period, but staggered. And we can maybe talk about this in more detail when we know more at our next meeting.
I would ask Holly to come in with a proposal, like,
Okay.
these are the people who we got, and these are my recommendations for
Okay.
going forward.
Okay. That makes sense.
We may have to change the description or the charge of the committee to make it, to add this rotating 5-year term.
And also probably should add to say that any non-union employee of the town of Mansfield.
We don't, none of the rest of us have any of the information.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It says the
This is the
function.
table that I handed.
Oh, but this is not the official, this is
No.
just a table,
Right.
so,
Right.
I mean, most people
Yeah,
have
this
to
is
ask for
on the table
documents.
that Holly pulled
the actual
together.
Yeah.
code of the personnel.
Okay,
And there's nothing in here about whether you may or may not be a union member.
yeah, so,
So I don't know whether you want to think about that, but
well, the union people have their own grievance process.
that's right. But so they aren't going to be
Right.
before this board.
Right, so we should make that clear when we're talking about what this board does.
I think it's clear in the description of it already.
We don't have the description. though,
Right,
so-
that's what.
Yeah, right, okay. Well, let's
That's good to
make sure that
clarify
it is
that,
clear.
sure.
See, yeah, okay. Okay, so we'll talk about that also. And we move on to the advanced hiring of community service coordinator. This is a position that's been proposed to deal with the problem that was mentioned in terms of outreach for people who may be eligible for a variety of support assistance. And as Holly and I were discussing, the functions have been kind of scattered, though people working hard at it. And it would make some sense to have somebody who has that as their responsibility. That's their job. And it's outlined here within the packet. This is a $48,000 job, total cost about $60,000.
Would this person also be helping folks, like if they were gonna be eligible for a waiver for tax purposes? And veterans for the various waivers that are available for them?
Yes,
Yes.
How much of their job would be grant writing and administering?
I think administering, so like using the small cities, the CDBG grants as an example. So to kind of summarize for Linda, because this is a service improvement request that Linda submitted on behalf of planning and development. So they've been administering with existing staff bandwidth as best they can. The Helping Hands program that's been funded with this $500,000 federal grant. And of course, they have to do everything else that they had to do before they got the grant. But this is, takes a fair amount of time, and they want to make sure that they have the right staffing for it. And basically looked at that as well as other things that, are being administered, like maintenance farms to families, whatever the council ultimately finally decides to do with the rescue plan, disadvantaged households, funding streams, as Terry mentioned, the fee waiver in camperships, and then affordable housing more broadly. So I definitely think they would play a role in grant writing. I don't know that they would necessarily be the lead more often than not, but they would certainly play a support function. And then once any external funding was received, they would be responsible for staffing and the reporting requirements.
The reporting
Yeah.
requirements. That's important.
Go ahead. I'll
You
go next.
see this definitely as a full-time job that is needed.
Yeah, I think, talking with Linda, going over her budget and her budget request, I think the answer is yes, but I also think that, as a practical matter, when you talk about scaling something back to part-time, we've tried to contract for services like this in the past, and we just haven't been successful in filling that need. So I think when you look at the whole host of things that the department's trying to do, and in this particular suite of services more broadly, Linda's made the case to me that it would be a full-time position.
So I support this. I think this is I think this is important. In terms of the required, so my understanding is if you put something as required, it's required. Like when you interview people that essentially, they don't have it, then they're out. And finding people who actually have HUD funding experience is extremely specialized. And the CDBG as well is pretty darn specialized. It seems like,
So that could be softened a bit from required, you're saying?
yeah, I
It's
mean,
like-
it'd be great if somebody
desirable.
walked in with it, but I mean, those are teachable things,
Mhm.
but somebody who's already done it, I mean, they're just not that many people. And it's something that I would think of as, this is what you'll be doing, but we're gonna teach you how to do it.
I would suggest substituting federal funding programs for HUD, and then particularly HUD funding
Where are you?
on knowledge, skills, and abilities.
But again, I would make that more of a, since this person is mostly gonna be administering rather than running the program, it seems like asking for that level of expertise is really gonna limit your pool.
Are these shared responsibilities at the moment amongst staff? And we're creating a position to take shared responsibilities and put it under one umbrella?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the staff within planning and development right now, collectively, folks are trying to accomplish this. That's okay.
And how are they doing all this at the moment?
Well, I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, they're getting these responsibilities in addition to their normal planning and development, zoning responsibilities.
Fee waiver program, just summarize that. What exactly is the fee waiver program?
So depending on your income, you have the ability to apply for a discounted or waived fee for various, so you can think of like the community center as an example. There's a fee waiver program for camperships and memberships as the community center. So it's income based, so if you qualify, you can get a basically discounted or entirely waived membership.
It's possible to get taxes waived for some people, as I understand it. Am I incorrect about that?
Yeah.
Whose actual recommendation is this? Is Holly, is this your recommendation? Is it coming from the planning and
So-
development town
so-
manager?
Yeah, so it was coming from me, the planning and development director, as part of her budget request, submitted a service improvement to create this position, and then that conversation led to, starting the position earlier because we're trying to get these grant dollars for helping hands out the door, not waiting till July 1, which leaves 6 months to get the remainder of the funding out, starting it a little earlier, so that person can be in place a little longer.
Just technically, how do we do this when the budget does not contemplate this and we're not yet in the new budget?
Right, so you as a personnel committee would be recommending the creation of the position in the current budget year, the council would approve it, we would
And the
do
money would
salary
taken
transfers,
from
you know,
transfer.
we do budgetary transfers all the time to cover the cost.
And I mean, big issue, as I understand it, is with federal grants, is there's so much paperwork so this person would be doing the paperwork component of it.
Correct.
And
And
primarily be, you know, this liaison, wherever the right action word is, you know, with constituents,
Right.
beneficiaries of the program.
so that's where I wonder, so they would be doing,
They would be the customer service person. They would
on
be,
this,
whereas right now, depending on who the call comes in, Linda might be fielding that call, or Jolene,
Yeah.
or Sandy, and so since nobody's really like, this is their day job, it's kind of triage and somebody, you know, help this person would be doing it.
So a new program comes in and this person reaches out, has some sense of how best to reach out. Or somebody in a disadvantaged position comes to the town and says, hey, I need help. And this person would sit down with that person and say, here are various programs that you're eligible for.
Understand the programs that we administer, the opportunities that exist, figure out what they would qualify for. Some of these things, some of these programs, you know, you can't qualify for this if you're also receiving that. And so somebody that understands all these interplays.
Yeah.
And the job is with the cooperation of human services, so it's not just a planning and development. job.
Yeah, I mean, it's housed, we house a position in a department, so we're
Mhm.
proposing to house this within planning and development. I think that, you know, I'm kind of most comfortable with that. But yeah, there would be constant, you know, referral and interaction with human services, social workers.
so
So I'm sorry, what are we doing tonight? We're gonna recommend this to the council?
Well, that's an option that's on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and then,
in order for it to kind of move forward and get, you know, funded and then potentially advertised and all that has to kind of start
and
somewhere.
this will be on the following council's agenda.
Yeah, I mean, either that or, I mean,
Tonight, we could recommend it.
Because I really, this particular moment, need a little more information on how to make a decision, but tonight I could recommend it to go to the council.
Well, it would go as a motion to the council, which the council could approve tonight.
That's right.
And once that happens, the wheels will be turning to select and hire this person.
I've been really concerned about what's been going on with planning and development for a while now. Because first of all, we added development to their scope of work. And as a planning department, they're still working out all kinds of things from marijuana retailers to dealing with proposals from multifamily housing developers. And then we threw on a whole bunch of stuff that has to do with working with Cynthia around economic development. And now we've got all the ARPA money coming in, that all, you know, the federal requirements for managing these things are incredible. And all of these community development programs require people to have real outreach, which is something which is actually prohibited to planning and zoning. So this really, I've been waiting for this because I've been really concerned that that the staff in that department isn't big enough to handle all of the stuff that they have undertaken.
This person reports to planning and development.
That's right.
Is that an issue?
No, because many of the grants that they're applying for come through planning and development, like the HUD grants and the CBDG.
But not all, right? There could be some
Well,
programs.
there are some that will come, I mean, like the ARPA money comes through the council, and there will probably be some youth bureau or human services programs where they will be working together, senior center projects stuff. So it's got to be a collaborative thing.
Yeah.
But you can't have three bosses. So
Right.
you have one boss.
Yeah.
and the boss will be Linda.
Yeah.
So in terms of the position requires the following knowledge. What is program administration?
So, these are programs that are listed, like administering the Helping Hands program. So that would be,
But, I mean, that's a brand new program, so nobody has. So, like comparable.
oh, you're talking
position,
about, yeah, so, right, so, I think, so you can get really specific and say, financial assistance program administration experience, but I guess to your point, rather than be super prescriptive or explicit about the type of program administration, I guess, putting it in a sort of a general bucket like this, then, people explain their own experience and you kind of decide as the hiring manager, okay, yeah, I see how this is relevant, or it's not particularly relevant. I mean, is your concern, Terry? that
So if I
someone
read
should-
this program administration, I would think that meant I had to be a director of a program. And this seems like a different,
I hear that differently. I think this is really this is grant-based stuff.
well, so
So it's
then
not
it
part of
should,
our regular budget.
so then the language should be more, the language,
Coordination? Would that be program coordination? Administering programs?
and again, and I'm not sure that that's not like how you would measure that knowledge was there. I'm just throwing it out there in terms of like what you're looking for. I think this is a really important position. And to be honest, if I were like in charge, I would say, make it an MSW. And not a clinical licensed social worker, but somebody who I would know who would
That's what we're
understand
talking
all of this. Or possibly maybe somebody who's coming out of a master's in public policy program, but and like an analytical experience. I mean, how are you going to? Are they going to be doing analysis, and what kind of, and like how are you going to measure that?
That's why I think this is really grant-based stuff. This work is administering state and federal grants, basically.
I just think the language in here should reflect that more.
I
Should
So
we
you want
change-
somebody with grant experience.
Can we change program to grant?
But it's broad, so just in case it's not a grant, that, if the grants
Well, this
dry
is,
up, there's,
That's one of several.
is this a job description? So it has to be clear.
yes,
Yeah.
this is the job description.
Um,
We already have experience reviewing, monitoring grant agreements.
But are you thinking you're gonna hire somebody who's already done all this before?
Well, I think there would be candidates, potentially candidates, that would be kind of a lateral for them. Maybe they're moving, their families relocating.
Is it possible, though, that the hire might be somebody who doesn't have this experience?
I think it's pretty really possible.
So I don't think you can say that they requires the following knowledge. I think it's better to hire somebody who has the possibility to learn it and do a really good job than to worry about whether they've done it before. But I think this last bullet, is better language in general for what you're looking for.
How about instead of saying requires, saying prefers?
Prefers.
Yeah.
The following knowledge.
Well, that's not really grammatical.
No,
but you
it's
know what
not.
I mean.
Yeah.
I have to remind everybody of the time. We have a motion to make yet, and it's 6:53.
Okay. So can we say familiarity with government funding programs? Because as we go forward, there might be others.
Publicly funded
Yeah,
program,
publicly funded program.
that captures federal or state.
Yeah.
publicly funded.
And take out the particularly CDBG, although that is significant, it's not.
I mean, that would be a bonus if somebody came forward, right, and they happen to be in their resume, but I don't.
If there are no other changes, as Brian said, do you want to make a motion?
I would like to make a friendly amendment to the motion, if I may. Move effective March 28th for council consideration, a full-time community service. I'm not ready to endorse that at this particular moment. So I'd like to change the wording, move effective March 28th, 2022 for council consideration to hire a full-time community service coordinator in the planning and development department starting May 1st, 2022. 2 months in advance.
We want to give the council authorization to get going now, correct?
We could make a recommendation to council, to
Recommendation.
authorize staff to get going.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So,
If we move that council consider this, does that then put everything off another couple of weeks? If we just ask the council to consider it? You know, you gotta consider it.
Shouldn't change time.
Mhm.
I can support the motion with the friendly amendment.
Move effective March 28th to endorse council consideration.
No,
Sure.
to, what did I just say? To, for council consideration, to hire the full-time community service coordinator. We're just putting it forward to the council. We're not necessarily endorsing it in the meeting. The council will endorse it.
I would prefer that it be as it's initially worded, but we can have a,
We don't have to second it, and then
Right,
one of
yeah,
us can make
okay,
it, so
Okay,
he makes the motion.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a second? No, the motion fails.
is there a second?
no.
So
So do you want to make the motion for the,
Kevin, I'm gonna sign off here just to kind of help get us moving. So, thanks.
I'm gonna do the same, and I'll be signing in from my house rather than my office, so I may be a minute or two behind you.
Sounds good.
Move effective March 28, 2022 to endorse hiring a full-time community service